So this video is where the whole project started. My entire goal had not coalesced, so some of the video and audio are not to the level I aspire to, but there are some good themes worth talking about. During COVID, we had a lot of time to reflect. And one of the things I thought a lot about was just how so many disciplines seem to lack connections. In elementary school, sometimes teachers don't feel comfortable in all the subject areas, so they don't feel comfortable integrating topics. Middle and high school teachers don't always talk across grade levels. Even at the university level, sometimes people within our department don't talk that much. Several years ago, we had a good collaboration between the first year engineering and technical communication pillars in our department, but it took some serious effort and is not routinely built into our contracts. So this past spring, I got to see some of my TechCom colleagues present at a conference, and they got to see me present. And we were both amazed with the great stuff that we're doing, but we didn't always have time to share. We need to find more ways to make this happen. So during going back to the original story, during COVID, I was looking for places to travel where there's a lot of spacing. I went to places like Hocking Hills and visited the Columbus Zoo and Metro Parks. And so we took a weekend trip to Oglebay and went to the good zoo.
Snow leopards do a lot more climbing. They're a little more agile than most cats, which is incredible to say because each cat has their own special adaptations. But if you think of something like a lion, the only real strength they have is being strong. These guys are incredibly agile, being built to climb on those mountains and hunt.
So going backstage or behind the scenes with Courtney Snyder, I started to ask some questions and got to know her background a little bit. Then it occurred to me, there's no real training to be a zookeeper with everything a zookeeper has to do, especially because Courtney is involved in educational outreach. You can get a degree in biology, zoology, natural resources, animal science. Those tend to be what you see in LinkedIn when it comes to getting jobs at a zoo. However, in order to understand and do the job she does, it helps to have a knowledge of skills like publicity, communication, social studies, history, etc. She showed us around the snow leopard exhibit area and introduced us to their snow leopards. I had a chance to ask her some questions about what she wished she would have learned in school a little bit more. I think what she shares provides a great opportunity for us to make our individual courses more relevant. Sometimes what we teach when we only teach the content standards isn't as important as teaching the big picture and skills and how everything applies to the real world.
I wish I would have learned a little bit more about evolution and the aspect of how we formed the classes of animals we have today. So when I took herpetology, everything was very new to me because he focused a lot on how reptiles and amphibians evolved. In English, I wish I would have focused more on sending messages, how to communicate using empathy and things like that. So how to better form our conservation messages. I do struggle with that. Communicating with different age groups would be beneficial. So typically in English, they teach you how to communicate, properly. You can't use that when you're talking to a kindergartner. And I do talk about why the snow leopard's endangered. How can I blame the people of Asia for killing the snow leopards that are killing their livestock when that's their livelihood? I'm not in their position. I don't understand. Having a little bit more exposure to understanding their financial situations in those areas and how their economic systems work. The snow leopards are heavily persecuted for the livestock killings. So a lot of the reason they are killing livestock is not because that's what they want to do, it's because humans are expanding their agriculture and developing in those areas, and that's reducing the habitat availability for the snow leopard's prey items. So as their prey items move away, they then resort to whatever is there. So what organizations such as Snow Leopard Trust are doing is helping financially support those farmers. The snow leopard kills your goat, will let me pay for the goat so you don't have to kill the snow leopard. So they get some sort of compensation for it. They're still angry at the snow leopard. The snow leopard is still a future threat, but to know, okay, if it happens again, they'll still support me is great. Another thing they're doing is trying to prevent wildlife trafficking. So you may know that traditional medicine in some Asian countries utilizes tiger bone. Because the tigers are becoming so endangered, they have also started to use snow leopard bone, and their fur is very valuable as well. So they often call them like ghosts of the mountains because they're so elusive, so they're kind of like a mystery. So in that aspect, they are. I would not say they spiritually respected. They do have some sort of cultural connection to the people of that area. Something they are doing with animals, what we call a rewilding process. It's a little different than just releasing a wild animal back into the wild. We still consider our zoo animals to be wild animals. Like, I wouldn't reach in and pet Zara. So they still have those instincts to kill. So with a snow leopard, you would have like a giant forest, a really rocky area, and you'd put goats in with them and just let them hunt themselves, let them figure it out themselves. And you would do that for a whole generation. And then that next generation that is raised somewhat wild cats could then potentially be released.
So getting to hear Courtney's perspective, I found it interesting when she talked about not learning about evolutionary trees or phylogenetic trees and families and classification as much until she took herpetology at university. I remember teaching about phylogenetic trees in high school biology, but my big moment of understanding was when I studied entomology at university. How animals have evolved to meet natural needs should be a huge standard. It's how experts classify animals, and without using that, we do a disservice to anybody that studies biology, which includes, doctors and physicians. Unfortunately, sometimes these topics aren't taught in enough depth as they should in certain schools due to political and religious pressures. Another thing Courtney mentioned is she wished she would have learned more about communicating at different levels to different audiences with different purposes, depending on if she's talking to small children or if she's talking to families or if she's talking to experts in her field. This is something we highlight in our first year design course, is having students communicate the same topic to different audiences with different purposes. Courtney also mentioned social studies and history. When I teach history, I use the GEARS acronym to talk about power structures. I think you can realize the importance of social studies and history in that context and the conflict between geographic power with Mother Nature, the economic power, the people's livelihood that deals with the livestock, and the social cultural power of how some people view these majestic animals. They all play a role in how we communicate about these fantastic creatures. If we focus solely on saving these animals without knowing the context of the culture, the power dynamic between these different groups, we're really not doing the best we can to help preserve the species, because we're not going to have buy-in from all the stakeholders. Thanks again for listening to another one of these podcasts. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll hope to see you in another week.